Hi, it's Patrick Hutzel here from IntensiveCareHotline.com with another quick tip and questions answered for families in intensive care. So Reggie writes me an email and she says that her 76-year-old mum had a stroke and a seizure. She was found at home and she had trouble breathing on her own. So they called an ambulance and then they suggested putting her on a ventilator. But in order to do that, they obviously had to induce her mum into a coma. And now the ICU has run several tests and they can't figure out why she won't wake up. She was also diagnosed with dementia last year, and Reggie is very nervous about her mum's brain activity, although everything looked fine up to now. Any insight I could give would be great. Thank you in advance. So Reggie, getting your mother on a ventilator always requires an induced coma. There is no such thing as ventilation with a breathing tube in intensive care without inducing somebody into a coma, because it's very painful, very uncomfortable, and the body also needs to rest. And it's the same on the other hand, an induced coma also always requires mechanical ventilation in the breathing tube. Also, dementia, potential seizures and a stroke will delay waking up after an induced coma. It would be good to know if your mum is still on any sedatives such as midazolam or Versed or on propofol or Diprivan. Any future prognosis will also be determined by a CAT scan or an MRI scan of the brain. Have they already done that? Do you know? So then Reggie writes back. So she says, my mum is on no other sedatives and according to them the CT scan looked good. She has a breathing tube which they want to transfer to her neck. They're saying that it would make her more comfortable, and they also want to place a feeding tube in her stomach because it's been day 9 and the nutrition may leak into her lungs if they don't move the feeding tube. I guess my frustration is that they tell me they have no idea why she won't wake up, and the hospital says that, and the hospital that she's in is a 2-star hospital. I am contemplating getting her transferred to a better hospital, but at this point in time, I'm not sure whether the outcome would be any better. Again, any insights would be much appreciated from Reggie. It's interesting that you say that your mum is on no other sedatives after day 9, and that sounds reasonable that after day 9 on ventilation and a breathing tube and a stroke and seizures, that you don't want your mum on any sedatives. And you're saying that the CT scan looked good. So the reality, Reggie, is when patients wake up from an induced coma, it can take time. Sometimes it can take weeks, it can take sometimes days, it can take months. The reality is nobody has a crystal ball, and as I said, a stroke and seizures definitely delay waking up, and even if she's not on any more sedatives. The other thing that's probably happening if she's having seizures, she's probably on medications such as Keppra or phenytoin to control the seizures, and they also have a sedative effect, which means, again, even though she might be off the midazolam and the propofol, the Keppra and the phenytoin might make her still sleepy. The other thing that's important to look at, Reggie, is to find out what your mother's Glasgow Coma Scale is, or GCS. That'll be another indicator how quickly your mum can wake up, what neurological function is there by assessing the Glasgow Coma Scale. Now then you are saying she has a breathing tube which they want to transfer to her neck. Basically what you're referring to is transferring the breathing tube to a tracheostomy, right? The tracheostomy sits here in the neck, and yes, that will make her more comfortable. However, before doing that, your mum or the intensive care team needs to make sure that they do everything beyond the shadow of a doubt to get your mum off the breathing tube and the ventilator in the first place. Only after they have done everything beyond the shadow of a doubt to take out the breathing tube in your mum's mouth, then they can consider a tracheostomy. Only then. And I can't stress that enough. You know, your biggest challenge is that you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of ICUs are getting more and more complacent by not trying hard enough to get to remove the breathing tube and just do a tracheostomy, which changes the recovery path for your mom considerably. Imagine removing the breathing tube, your mom can move onto a hospital ward, whereas a tracheostomy, she has an artificial airway. She probably stays on the ventilator. She might have to be weaned over many weeks, sometimes months. She might end up, if you're in the United States, in a long-term acute care facility, which is a disaster, right? So you need to make sure before you're even considering a tracheostomy that the ICU is doing everything beyond the shadow of a doubt to get out that breathing tube and get your mom off the ventilator. You are saying also placing a feeding tube into her stomach because it's been 9 days and the nutrition may leak into her lungs. Well, if nutrition leaks into her lungs, you're referring to the nasogastric tube, and you are referring that the nasogastric tube may leak into the lungs. Yes, the risk is there, but then again, if the nasogastric tube is in the right place, and that can be tested just simply with some auscultation with a stethoscope and a syringe, right? There is absolutely no need for that to happen, right? It just needs a couple of tests every shift to make sure it's safe. Again, I would not rush into a feeding tube put into her stomach just as much as I wouldn't rush into a tracheostomy being done. Yes, I can hear your frustration that they tell you that they have no idea why she won't wake up, but you need to give this time, and time is often the ultimate healer. And I know ICUs don't have time, that's why they keep pushing for the things that they are pushing, but they're pushing because they don't want to lose money, they want to free up their beds. It's not about clinical need. Clinical need says your mom is not waking up and she needs to be given time to wake up in her own time without necessarily rushing to do a tracheostomy and a feeding tube, a PEG tube in her stomach. So transferring her to another hospital might be an option, absolutely. But you got to make sure this is a good hospital where she's going to, and we can help you with that. We have a large database of where good hospitals are. The best next step really is to contact me on any of the numbers on the top of the website, or just send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com. So that's my tip for today. I hope that helps, Reggie. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll see you again in a few days.